You've seen thousands of traffic lights in your life, but you've probably never stopped to wonder why they're vertical. Turns out, there's a good reason, and a few places that completely ignore it. Look up at any intersection in your neighborhood, and you'll probably see the same thing. Red on top, yellow in the middle, green at the bottom, stacked like a little colorful tower. It's so normal you've never questioned it. But here's what's wild. This setup isn't actually required by law. The Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, basically the rulebook for American road design, allows both vertical and horizontal signals. No preference stated. So if both are perfectly legal, why did vertical become the standard almost everywhere? The answer takes us through some surprisingly clever engineering, a bit of human psychology, and one very stubborn Irish neighborhood that literally smashed their traffic light until the city gave in. Let's start with the biggest reason vertical signals became the norm. They're a lifeline for millions of drivers who see the world differently than you might expect. About 8% of men and around 0.5% of women have some form of color blindness. That's roughly 1 in 12 guys. Most of them can't reliably tell red from green. Now imagine pulling up to an intersection where the difference between stop and go is a color you literally cannot see. Pretty terrifying, right? The vertical arrangement fixes this beautifully. When red is always on top, yellow always in the middle, and green always at the bottom, colorblind drivers can navigate using position alone. Top means stop, bottom means go, middle means slow down. It's simple, it's consistent, and it's prevented countless accidents. Early traffic systems naturally evolved toward vertical because it just made sense. When engineers were designing the first widespread electric signals in the early 1900s, they needed something instantly recognizable, something you could learn once and apply everywhere. And that standardization became incredibly valuable as America's highway system exploded in the mid-20th century. Imagine if every city had picked its own layout, horizontal here, diagonal there, maybe triangular somewhere else. Driving across state lines would have been like learning a new language every time. The vertical format gave the whole country a shared visual vocabulary. Here's where it gets interesting. Not everywhere followed the vertical standard, and for good reason. Drive through parts of Texas, Florida, or Louisiana, and you'll notice something different. A lot of their traffic lights hang horizontally instead of vertically. These aren't mistakes or outdated installations. They're deliberate engineering decisions based on one very real problem: hurricanes. A vertical traffic signal in high winds basically turns into a sail. It catches the wind, whips around, and can snap right off its mounting. When you're designing infrastructure that needs to survive sustained winds over 100 miles per hour, every detail matters. Horizontal signals, mounted with 2 attachment points on a span wire, present way less wind resistance. They stay put when vertical ones would be swinging around like flags. Southern states learned this lesson the expensive way. After watching vertical signals get destroyed during major storms, many switched to horizontal mounting in high wind areas. It's a perfect example of local conditions overriding national standards when safety's on the line. Wind isn't the only factor. Vertical clearance matters too. Traffic signals need to hang at specific heights above the road. And in tight spots like under bridges or near low-hanging obstacles, mounting horizontally can buy you an extra couple feet of clearance. Doesn't sound like much, but those inches can be the difference between a routine installation and having to completely redesign an intersection. And sometimes horizontal signals are just easier to see. When drivers are coming out of tunnels or crossing bridges, or when buildings and trees block sightlines, the wider horizontal spread can be more visible than a narrow vertical stack. Now here's where the story gets really good. Syracuse, New York is home to the only upside-down traffic light in the United States. And the story behind it is something else. In the Tipperary Hill neighborhood on Syracuse's west side, there's an intersection at Tompkins Street and Milton Avenue where the traffic light has been backwards for about a century. Green on top, red on the bottom. It's been that way since the 1920s. Here's what happened. Tipperary Hill was, and still is, a heavily Irish neighborhood. When the city installed a standard red over green traffic light there, some of the local Irish kids weren't having it. To them, putting the red light above the green was like putting Britain above Ireland. Red for the British, green for the Irish. An unacceptable symbol sitting right in the middle of their neighborhood. so they started throwing rocks at it. They called them Irish confetti. Every time the city replaced the red light, they'd smash it again. This went on for a while, until the city finally gave up and flipped the whole thing upside down, green on top, red on the bottom. The state of New York actually tried to change it back at one point. That just made things worse. More rocks. Eventually, on St. Patrick's Day 1928, city officials met with residents who made it crystal clear the light would keep getting smashed as long as red was on top. The city caved for good. Today, that upside-down light still operates at the same intersection. There's a statue nearby honoring the original stone throwers. The neighborhood's still full of Irish pubs with shamrock logos. It's a perfect example of how something as simple as a traffic light can become deeply meaningful when it bumps up against cultural identity. The story of traffic signals goes back further than you'd think. The very first traffic light was installed in London on December 9, 1868, at the intersection of Bridge Street and Great George Street, right near the Houses of Parliament. It wasn't anything like what we have today. It was a manually operated contraption designed by a railway engineer named John Peake Knight. During the day, it used semaphore arms. At night, gas-powered red and green lamps. A police officer had to stand there and operate it by hand. The system worked for a few weeks. Then disaster struck. In January 1869, a gas leak caused the thing to explode, badly injuring the officer operating it. That pretty much killed the idea of traffic signals in Britain for decades. It took over 4 decades before anyone tried again successfully. Cleveland, Ohio gets credit for the first electric traffic light in 1914. A couple years later, European cities started catching on. Paris and Hamburg in 1922, then Berlin's famous 5-sided signal tower at Potsdamer Platz in 1924. What's remarkable is how quickly the basic vertical format became standard. There wasn't some grand international committee that decided red should go on top. It emerged naturally through trial and error, proved effective, and spread everywhere. There are some interesting quirks worth mentioning. In Quebec and the maritime provinces of Canada, horizontal signals use distinctive shapes for each color. Red lights are square, yellow lights are diamond-shaped, and green lights are circular. It's an extra layer of information beyond just position and color, another way to help colorblind drivers. Traffic signals aren't just technical devices. They're communication systems that have to work for millions of people with different abilities, backgrounds, and experiences. The fact that we've settled on something that works so well for so many, with room for local variation when needed, is actually pretty impressive. So next time you're sitting at a red light, take a second to appreciate what you're looking at. That simple stack of colored lights represents over 150 years of engineering evolution, countless safety considerations, and the occasional triumph of community stubbornness over standardization. Whether it's helping a colorblind driver navigate safely, surviving hurricane winds in Florida, or honoring Irish heritage in Syracuse, traffic signals are way more thoughtful than they look. The vertical traffic light isn't the standard because someone just decided it should be. It's the standard because it works better than anything else we've tried. But the exceptions? Those tell stories that are just as good as the rule itself.